Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this very special report entitled Rest in Peace, Mr. Rob Kirby. Joining me today is my friend Jim Willie. You can find his work at golden-jackass.com. Mr. Dr. Jim Willie, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's good to see you. Got to say, I had a heavy heart ever since Sunday evening.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Kirby was a friend of mine. I stayed at his home on two separate nights in 07 and 08 before the conference speaking gig, Cambridge House. And he was something of a mentor for me. He was a very kind man. He was a generous man with his time. He was a very brilliant man. He told me his story regarding, I believe it was Toronto Dominion Bank. They let him go because he was a bit too vocal about the Canadians being water boys for Wall Street banks regarding derivative trading and, fortifying the back end, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he went solo for a while. I think he did something between the newsletter and his Toronto Dominion days. He helped me to understand derivatives. We made a deal back in 2008. We met each other in 2006, but it was brief. He introduced me to a guy whose name began with a V. He was a former central bank advisor, Vendetto Vergani, began with a V. Can't remember his name anymore. Very hard to come up with names sometimes in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I made a deal with him. I would help him in a certain area, and he would help me with understanding bank derivatives. So we talked about interest rate swaps. We talked about credit default swaps. We talked about Office of Control of the Currency, Comptroller, Office of Comptroller of the Currency, OCC, which had, for instance, big amount of data sticking out with Morgan Stanley in the last half of 2009. There was not a run into safety with Treasury bonds. There was a $8.5 trillion investment in interest rate swap derivatives, which caused a big, let's just say, a big current that others followed. Rob Kirby confessed to me 2 years ago that he did not have pneumonia in early 2020. The doctors later came back and told him that he had been, they found a neurotoxin in his system, and they said it was exotic. This is 2020, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was an exotic neurotoxin, so they talked about who might have developed such a thing. And there's a little place in Virginia that works with security, and that name came up. I was concerned after that because he was in a coma for 30 days, and he said, "I never heard this before. I've never heard of a case like this before." Most of my information, Jean-Claude, is from 2 years ago. He said he was in a coma, but he could hear. Couldn't move, couldn't open his eyes, couldn't talk, but he could hear. And he heard the doctors talking about his chances for coming out of the coma. And he did. And we talked 4 months later after the doctors called him up and said, "Look, we found something. You need to come in. We'll talk about this." And during that conversation, he told me, "I've never been in better shape in my life. Several months since my coma. I guess this was about maybe October of 2020.
Yeah.
Several months after his coma, I think was February of 2020. He said, doing power walks. I'm going to the gymnasium, light work with weights. I made a buddy with one of your clients here in Toronto who lives nearby, one of my clients. And he just came out and blurted it. He said, "Jim, my conversation about the ESF, I think, got me this attack." And I didn't talk to him about much because I knew his point. I didn't go on and on and on about that because I know a little bit about the ESF because that was part of my my training, if you will. Derivatives, ESF, because they're involved with derivatives, petrodollar management. There's a triangle involved. Let me just get this briefly. A triangle involved. The dollar has a flip side of the treasury bond. That's the vehicle that people hold and run with because it earns a yield, or it used to anyway. So the dollar is one end of the triangle, gold is another, and crude oil is a third. There are trillions in derivatives holding that all together. And that is what's going to come apart right now.
Yeah.
We've had some preliminaries on the derivatives for petrodollar come apart for the last 3 years. And remember, 2 years ago, we had negative crude oil prices. Now we've got the Biden show. And I believe the Rockefellers are running the energy policy. So that's how you got over $100. And here's the lesson. The Rockefellers engineered the oil price to go over 100 so they could exit the petrodollar derivatives. So by having that at work, we're actually lessening the risk of bank collapse in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the rocks, I call them the Rocky fellas because, you know, the good fellas of New Jersey and the mafia, good fellas. Now it's the Rocky fellas. They're in control of the energy policy. They diverted the Colonial Pipeline to China. I mean, they did a lot of things to harm the U.S. economy. The Rockefellers are probably the most harmful factor to the United States and its economic financial health in its entire history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're exiting petrodollars.
Hey, Jim,
Okay.
just hold on a second here before we go too fast and ahead of ourselves. A few people in the chat are saying rest in peace, of course, Rob Kirby. We are talking about the ESF. Guys, if you want to see that episode, it was deleted originally, I think, with my first or my second channel, but there was a backup here on my Odyssey account. And so if you want to watch that episode, a big tribute to Rob Kirby there, just type in Rob Kirby. You'll find those two older episodes here on my Beyond Mystic 2 backup account here on Odyssey. I'll put the links down below as well. Rob joined me a couple of months ago also. We did with Jim Willie also in this particular series, the death of the petrodollar. So we got into all of those details. We briefly touched again how this derivative bomb was going to go off. Robert had so many insights and deep understanding of how all of this financial world and all the shenanigans of this mafia really, really work. And my heart goes out to him. I just want to say that here. I have to say, having Rob on the show a couple of times, he's probably the guest where I enjoyed the most the pre-show and post-show conversations. Rob and I are both from Ontario, Canada. We were following politics very closely, and the conversations we had in the post-show, we often joke that we should have recorded them because it would make for really cool episodes. Of course, not here for YouTube. We were speaking a lot of truth. So I will absolutely miss Rob and those conversations. And I know that he was so proud and he loved his family very much. And so my heart goes out also to his family members who are dealing with this at this time. And thank you everyone for joining us. And please do, if you feel like it and you like the work that Rob Kirby did over these last couple of decades here to educate humanity, please leave a comment in the live chat and also below. Let people know so that we don't forget the work and the contribution that Rob Kirby did for all of humanity. So a big thank you to all of you, and rest in peace, Rob Kirby. Jim, today, a lot of the information and what saddens me about the passing also of Rob is that we're getting to this inflection point of secret reveals and that Cliff Carlton is Webbot data. And we're getting to the point where everything that he was talking about for all this time and being ostracized and called a tinfoil hatter for, losing his job for, is now coming to light. And he won't see the day, perhaps he will from above, but he won't be here to see the day of those aha moments that he spoke about so frequently. So that saddens me a little bit that a hero here won't be able to see the fruits of a lot of his labor, to put it that way. What are your thoughts about this?
I hope he joins the Lord's finance staff.
Yeah.
He was very kind to me. He was always there if I needed to talk about something that was confusing to me. He was a good mentor. He helped me a lot. He had me over to spend the night a couple of times before the Cambridge House conferences in Toronto, and his brother took me out to dinner for lunch with Rob before the conference opened, and just very friendly guy. His brother treated me nicely and was very complimentary. He read all of my public articles, and I wrote a lot of them back then. I haven't written one in over 2 years here now, because the last time I did, my friend was killed in a head-on car crash, which I believe to be one of my recent demonic events. I've got a lot. Anyway, Rob advised me to tread lightly on the ESF, Exchange Stabilization Fund. So I will tread lightly on it. I believe part of the petro recycle surplus bond holdings from the Saudis and OPEC, I believe a quarter or a third was held in the ESF, and it was used to maintain stability in the financial markets. Let's just leave it at that, okay?
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that.
But folks, if you want to read a lot of Rob's work on that particular topic, right now it still resides here at KIRBYanalytics.com. Again, I'll try to put all of these links down below if you guys are interested in that work, and hopefully somebody will take up the baton and continue the amazing
Rob was a treasure of information regarding, say, the dealings and the historical sequence of Bear Stearns and its kill.
Yeah.
Of Lehman Brothers and its kill. Every time I heard saw a video with that, I was spellbound, and at times took notes. There's a lot going on whenever there's a bust of a Wall Street bank. It's usually odd man out. They did something like Bear Stearns was long gold and short the dollar. Lehman Brothers was an opportunity for the bigger banks and their larger holdings of mortgage bonds to get redeemed with 100 cents on the dollar that no one else did for the credit default swap. Basically bond insurance. Rob had all those. He could have gone on for an hour and a half about just Bear Stearns.
Yeah.
And if you ask me, I could give you 5 minutes. He was a treasure of information. He was a very kind man. And he had a style about him, a gentle, soft, slow-speaking, but deep manner. It always affected me. Whenever I talked with him, I hung up and went, wow, that was an experience. I don't expect to meet anybody like him again. Okay. I met him when he had dark hair. Anyway.
Well, I've been listening to Rob for many, many years before I had the channel. He was one of my favorites for sure. I think I probably saw him first on SGT Report, or maybe the Greg Hunter Show at usawatchdog.com. At any rate, he was just a big teddy bear, big loving guy. And again, we spoke a lot about our love for our families, but he was particularly put his family, and he kept going on about that in the after shows. And yeah, we were supposed to meet up the last couple of months with some of the news coming out, this
truckers.
year. Yeah, that stuff. And I couldn't make it out to Toronto. He's a little bit far from me, but yeah, I'm going to miss him. Guys, again, thank you for sharing this moment with us, and please leave some comments there for the family to read.
He's the second death in my colleague group, Jean-Claude. And the other one was mysterious too. So, I'm looking over my shoulder a little bit.
For sure. We're in those critical times, and let's get into that. You and I just recorded.
Let's talk about the Russian peg to the gold gram.
Mm-hmm.
I got some things. I got something I think very interesting to share, and I'm excited about it. And it's not simple. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go off on this direction. I need to locate that email because I have some notes.
Okay, and while you do that, I'll point the audience to our last pay-per-view episode. This is the uncensored version of Jim Willie, where we can talk open and freely. We did get into this gold back ruble here and what's happening mostly in Kiev, and some of that conversation we're going to try to tread carefully here today because the algos are running quite rampant on that. But if you want the full uncensored version, please do go check out this last pay-per-view. This was recorded on March 29, so just about a week ago, and this includes the latest report data that you can find at golden-jackass.com. So Jim, let's get into this. Bill Holter was on USA Watchdog, and he had an interesting take on what's going on here with the dollar and what's happening now with the gold back and the arbitrage opportunity here. So let's get into that and share with the audience what you made of this video and how perhaps you have a different take on it as well.
Well, the sequence is that last weekend I learned about it, and Hal Turner came out with an interpretation that I thought was very much off base. What he said was, if you got 5,000 rubles for 1 gold gram, and you use the troy ounce designation, and you use the 100 ruble per dollar conversion, you get some very simple napkin math of $1,600 for a gold price. Okay, very simple napkin math. And what Hal Turner said was that would mean that you got a 30% downgrade on the Treasury bond. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute, that's not the good focus. That's not the proper focus. That's not the way to look at this at all. So in my posted March report from March 29, which was a week ago, today's the 6th, yeah. I said, no, the focus is on the Russians grabbing control of the gold price. And they didn't give a downgrade to the Treasury bond. They gave an upgrade to the ruble. And I expected the ruble to move from, it was 92.5 or something at the time of posting my report. And I expected that it would go down to 80 and probably even lower. And that's an inverted currency designation.
Mm-hmm.
So as that number goes down, the ruble gets stronger. It's how many rubles per dollar, okay? And I expected it to go down to 80, which meant a stronger ruble. And I did my calculation, and 80 translates to, oh gosh, I don't want to get this wrong. I have my notes. I don't want to get this wrong. Other pad, pardon me here.
No problem.
At 80 rubles per dollar, that's exactly a $2,000 gold price. So I thought, we're going to make a beeline to 80. I put that in my report for March.
We're already down to 84, and so we're on track for your prediction.
Well, it was 82 a couple of days ago, so it kind of bounced off that support level, if you will, of the dollar. But if it goes to 64 rubles per dollar, that's 2,500 gold.
Yeah.
If it goes to where the ruble was 5 years ago, which was low 50s, that's a $3,000 gold price. Okay, so what the Russians did was they grabbed control of the gold price.
I just wanted to make a point here. I know we bounced off the low or the high year of 82, but when we did the interview, I think we were sitting at 89, and this is you were predicting this trend. So we're on trend now, although we've just had a little bit of a bounce here in the last year. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, so where do we go from here? The Russians have demanded that the Germans pay, which is plain as day, pay for oil and gas, in particular gas, in rubles. And a compromise seems to be forming. I don't know that it's concrete and signed and official, but it looks like Gazprom Bank will be used as a depository for euros, which will then be converted to rubles for sending back home to Russia. Okay, but then you got to fly. I want to call it. You have something ruining the table, tarnishing the situation, where the EU officials, European Union officials, raided a Gazprom bank. And that's just brutally corrupt. And Russia will not tolerate that. And the officials who did that or who ordered it might be paid a visit in the middle of the night in a harmful sense. Let's not get into that. Okay, so I think this is going to become an arbitrage game. And I said it exactly in my report, just like Holter believes. Holter's the only guy I've seen to have the deep dive. Where's this going? Right. Regarding Russia, Germany, and the ruble and gold. Okay, here's the outline of my theory. And this is not fully laid out in the March report because this is evolving. Russia is going to control the gold price, and they're going to lead toward an arbitrage. Because if the Russians, due to the ruble conversion, are going to pay, let's just say suddenly it's at 2,100, okay? After converting to ruble, from ruble rather to dollar. If it's at 2,100, then investors will look to buy gold a little under 2,000 in London and then sell it to Russia and make $100 or more profit. Yeah. So I believe what we're going to see is the Americans and the British are going to try to prevent now the opposite of what they had been doing. They're going to, I'm sorry, that's not the opposite. They're going to prevent the ruble from strengthening. If the ruble gets down toward 70, you're going to be dealing with a $2,200, $2,400 gold price. In the process of paying in euros, the Germans are going to be dumping their treasury bonds. If they pay in euros, then Gazprom Bank is going to be holding a lot of euros. And they actually might not want to convert all into rubles because the ruble might rise too fast. I know that sounds weird. There's a potential for the ruble to go up 20 or 30% quickly. And I don't think Russia wants that. I think they want a controlled rise in the ruble. That's very, very subtle. There's going to be a drain of London gold. They're already preventing the Russian refineries from good delivery bars to London. So London shot themselves in the legs, not the foot, in the legs. It was a stupid move. Okay, so extreme Russian leverage is coming with the arbitrage. The Russians could even use their third-party agents to buy London gold just to mess them up. Okay, there's going to be a pincer movement. There's going to be a global dumping, not global, the European dumping of treasury bonds. Now, Germany is unique in Europe. They're the only ones that have a really big trade surplus. It might not be as big as it used to be, but it's still a surplus. They still manage a lot of treasury bonds. And I think they're going to be dumping them in favor of the euro. So the euro is going to go up, but then the euro will be limited in its rise by the amount that Gazprom chooses to remain in the euro. If they get rid of half of the euros toward ruble, then the effect is going to be muted for the ruble rise. Now, this could get very dicey. Remember back in 1974, you've got to use history as a lesson because here we are with the 50-year echo with Russia and Germany, as opposed to the United States and the Saudis. The U.S. said to the Saudis, we'll pay for your oil in dollars, and you keep it in dollars in the form of treasury bonds. It was called the Petro Surplus Recycling. They kept them in treasury bonds. The Saudis owned treasury bonds. They held treasury bonds for year after year after year. Okay? Now, let's suppose Russia says to Germany, let's get creative here. Let's create a Russo Bund, a German Russo Bund that is held in euros in Russia. And the German responsibility is to pay a yield, and they might mess up the Americans by saying the Russian Petro Bund will always be 2% higher than the treasury bond to force even more treasury bond sales.
Mm-hmm.
This is very possible, and here's why they might be creative like that. If the Germans say, look, we'll pay in euros, but keep them in euros, we don't want to disrupt the Forex market too much. The Russians will say, but wait a minute, you idiots are offering negative yields. And the Russians will say, fix that. So the Russians might win a deal whereby they get a positive yield on their euro Petrobund.
Wow.
Okay, this could be the crucible to create some kind of a Russian euro bund. And I'm going to explore this and develop it in the April report. I might produce something a little earlier this month to get back on track, because I've had 2 straight months of the last few days of the month posting a report. Okay, this is very exciting. It's very disruptive. You're going to see a lot of sales of treasury bonds. You're going to see a lot of orders for London gold. You're going to see some refusals to sell London gold because they don't have any.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to force Basel to step in there and provide London with gold so they can avoid the negative, harsh publicity.
Mm-hmm.
If London has to admit we have no gold, they're going to ignite a global gold bull market. So ironically, Basel is going to have it in their best interests to provide gold to London for the arbitrage that results in a sale to Russia at a higher price.
Imagine the irony of that, Jim.
Oh, I tell you, this came to me only this afternoon, Jean-Claude. I was thinking about, what are we going to talk about? And I called a couple of friends. I wrote a couple of friends. I said, I'm working on something. And, the only missing part to this is the Euro bond, the Bund, German Bund. Bund is German bond.
Mm-hmm.
The German Bund is like our treasury bond. The only wrinkle in this was that the Bund is negative.
Mm-hmm.
And that won't work. The Russians say, we ain't going to do that. We'll end up dumping your euros. We don't care what happens to you idiots, because you have screwed us with the Nord Stream, and you're following the Biden gang with lunatic policy. And just to show how ridiculous things are, Jean-Claude, there are U.S.-based LNG, liquefied natural gas, ships that are entering the ports in the Baltic Sea, ready to supply Germany, but at more than twice the price. Okay, yeah, Germany's going to have some tough decisions. Do they want to wreck their economy in order to follow the Rockefeller-Biden policy? Or are they going to join forces with Russia and violate every principle that NATO and the Davos Economic Group stand for? This is going to get dicey.
Well, looking at this, breaking news here: the U.S. Mint sees the strongest gold bullion demand in 23 years. There's that. Alistair McLeod was saying the other day, I can see that the West will try to sanction gold next. Already, the price seems to be behaving oddly. This is in the last 2 days. And of course, we just had the FOMC minutes today, and they're talking about now faster than expected quantitative tightening and multiple 50 basis points increases here in 2022. So something has got
Not very
them
likely.
spooked.
Not very likely. They tried to tighten, remember, in 2016 and 17. It didn't work very well.
Right.
Okay, here's my other theory, Jean-Claude. We might have some cooperation between Team Trump and the Russians, so that the Russians are responsible for pushing the gold price to 2,500 and 3,000. A lot of clients of mine and a lot of other people have been wondering, how are we going to get to 2,500 and 3,000? Now we might know. The Russians pegged their currency to gold.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're going to change it. I think they're going to keep it. And the floating element will be the ruble Forex currency exchange rate.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the needle that moves. It's not like Hal Turner was saying about a downgrade of the dollar. We've already removed that from the entire table. That was a silly point. The point is that the Russians grabbed control of the gold price, and now the Russians and Putin can be blamed for chaos in the U.S. banks.
Right.
And they can blame Putin for how Wall Street might steal bank accounts. It won't be the Russians stealing it, but they caused the problem, and Wall Street would do the stealing and blame it on Russia, and maybe even come up with a fake story of some bridge to Russia that's total nonsense. I don't know. This is very subtle stuff. I wish Rob were here to sort out something, but honestly, what I did this afternoon was try to think like Rob. What would Rob think? Rob would say, well, there's an arbitrage in there, Jim. Go with it. Just use it. Go with it. Where does it take you? Where does the arbitrage go? Who are the players? Who will be buying in London? Well, you know, a lot of treasury bond holders might be looking to dump their treasuries, but they could hedge with leveraged gold accounts. The dumpers of treasuries might be leveraged with gold long accounts. This is going to break LBMA and break COMEX. This is very exciting.
Yeah.
This is the point we've been waiting for in time. I keep telling people for the last 3 years, I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm not sure how it's going to happen, but some things are going to unfold that put pressure on London and New York and break the system.
Right.
Okay, well, the knuckleheads in the Biden show and the crazy London gold bankers decided they were going to sanction Russia. Well, what can Russia do in return? They can peg their ruble to the gold price.
And here's the stellar leadership of the Biden presidency. He doesn't even know where he is. And of course, nobody wants to talk to him. They were all talking to Obama.
I think he's looking for the bathroom. I'm not sure. Anyway,
I
don't want to get into any Biden comments.
Oh my God!
I'm staying clear of that right now at this moment. We're going to see arbitrage.
Okay, we won't talk about that Biden either then. Guys, if you want to hear more about this story, just go check the pay-per-view.
Let the Congress sort that out, because the Congress in the United States might be doing an investigation. Let them do what they can. I'm going to be focusing on the gold market, the treasury market, the dollar. The dollar is almost irrelevant in this. This is the gold issue. This is the triangle. Remember, dollar, gold, oil.
Right.
The derivatives are going to come apart. They have to be liquidated. We've been operating with a phony, whirling dervish without mass foundation for 30 years. in the U.S. and Western banking system.
We got into that triangle here on this pay-per-view for the audience members, if you want to get into the details of that. And we got into the events calendar of how all of this might play out. So please do and go and check out that episode. But Jim, I wanted to bring your attention to this one here too. Cliff Hyde just posted this yesterday, I believe it was, on his BitChute, and he's talking about May 19th to May 26th, May 27 here, as these 7 days in May in which there's huge emotional tension values. And he seems to think that that has to do with the banking system and the fall of our central banks here. And maybe if we scroll back the calendar here a couple of weeks, he's talking about from Monday of this week, 2 to 3 weeks until we actually see here perhaps that 15% or that 20% shock inflation in 1 week, and then pursuing problems that lead to this central bank failure. And of course, the failure of what you were just talking about now, the LBMA and the pricing mechanisms, basically for all of our commodities. So extremely weird, chaotic days on the doorstep here, especially for May. What are your thoughts on all of that since we last spoke last week? Any new data points that seem to suggest that we are on this road or past this point of no return? Again, I know the Fed keeps telling us they're going to raise rates, but now they're not just a little bit, it's 50 basis points now a couple of times. Is this the last minute rhetoric until they pull the plug and start their new CBDC? Is that what's going on?
What's amusing right now, and like painfully amusing, like this is not funny haha, this is funny ouch.
Right.
50 basis points, we're already at negative 18% real rates if you look at the bond minus the CPI in reality.
Right.
What might come as a shock is calls for 5% interest rate hike.
Mm-hmm.
And that even that won't be enough. Get 2 of them and that won't be enough. Then they're going to have to come up with arguments to say that this is not going to be a permanent high inflation environment. That, you know, if we do some forward expectations, we might have like 2 years from now expectations of being down to 8 to 10%. But right now, let's enter reality and talk about the 15 to 20%. Okay, Volcker, I had thought was one of the better central bankers, but Rob Kirby and one other client set me straight.
London Paul? Who was it?
No, it was a client of mine, not
a contributor. Okay.
London Paul stabbed me in the back.
I didn't know that.
Don't want to get into that. London Paul was not who I thought he was. Okay, I have a client who's a very good student, and he's in Pennsylvania. Very nice guy, very helpful to me, provides me a lot of good information. And he said to me, Jim, if you do a little historical check, you'll find that Volcker removed the buy side to gold and made it a sell-only COMEX.
Mm-hmm.
He basically outlawed and removed the opportunity for investors to go long in gold. So it was a sell only, and that kept the lid on the price, and they could control it by eliminating long buy orders. Mm-hmm. And just rotate them and frustrate the people until they don't come back anymore. Okay.
The quintessential definition of a free market, Jeff.
Well, yeah, and remember, I talked about the triangle: the dollar, mm-hmm. gold, and oil.
Right.
Okay, that petrodollar derivative has a gold element in there, and part of it was keep selling gold and keep buying the dollar. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really sure how that figured in with oil, but it's very complex. And Kissinger, in your lower, well, he's in most of these photos. Mm-hmm. He was the architect, and he was not a finance expert, but he dabbled in the great. I'm sure he had Wall Street advisors, but he created the petrodollar recycle concept. Mm-hmm. And to me, I was a young kid at the time. I was 22 years old, and I followed it a little bit. I read the Wall Street Journal once in a while, but really not a lot. I was getting ready for graduate school and doing a lot of different things in preparation. But I thought, wow, that's a pretty smart concept. Keep it in the dollar and don't sell the dollar for, say, Saudi Riyal. And I thought, golly, if they sold all that and kept it in Riyal, their currency would go up so much that it would really harm their economy. Everything they sold would be expensive that wasn't oil. No country wants a zoom upward in their currency. You can't do that.
Mhm.
You wreck your economy.
Yeah.
And remember, it's a case in point. It was about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, we had the Swiss franc and the euro peg at 120.
Right.
Because the Swiss did not join the euro, and they were running little surpluses, and everybody was hunkering into the Swiss franc, and it went up too much. So what they did was they sold the Swiss franc and they bought U.S. stocks at the central bank. And they had a four-sided arbitrage of U.S. stocks, gold, the euro, and the Swiss franc. Very complicated, very complicated. But that only came out 5 or 6 years later, Jean-Claude. Okay, we're going to have the petrodollar recycle concept resurrected with Russia, because Russia is the new Saudi.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just with oil, it's with gas.
Mm-hmm.
I have a graph in my March report. It's for energy dependence, energy import by European countries. And I got a smaller graphic, which is European countries and their natural gas dependence on Russia. And Italy is way up there. Netherlands is way up there. Germany is still high, but less. It's still very high. Like 65% of German natural gas comes from Russia. You think they can do without that?
Mm-hmm.
You think Daimler-Benz can do without that? You think BMW can do without that? You think Porsche can do without that? You think Volkswagen can do without that? Well, BASF, which is their German Kodak equivalent, already announced we cannot do without that.
Not for long, anyways.
You're going to see a lot of German companies knock at the German Chancellery office and say, what the hell are you doing?
Didn't Denmark already do that last Thursday, I think? They were the first to fall.
Sure, but
yeah,
it's going to be a regular event, Jean-Claude.
Mm-hmm.
And the parliament is going to be under pressure. The Bundestag is the parliament in Germany.
Yeah.
They're still running nonstop climate change nonsense on the press. Climate change. I've got 3 or 4 German clients who are in touch with me regularly. Jim, it's amazing. It's the lead story every day on the news. Climate change. I said, they're not talking about the dollar? No, they're talking about climate change. Now
they're not talking about that thing going on in the world, the sickness either. Suddenly it's no longer important.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the adverse effect report. It's coming up. And then the Miami Open and all the people who.
Oh my God. Like the mainstream media is doing everything they can to ignore this news story. And a lot of sports fans are like, okay, you and I were talking about this months ago about European soccer players falling, keeling over. And we said, oh, watch just a couple of months later, because the products were a little bit late being introduced here in North America. We're going to see the same issues. I thought it was going to be hockey night in Canada. But here we have now the Miami Open, 15 players couldn't even finish. And they can't explain why.
Oh, my doctor said it's not related to that thing. Remember, Rafael Nadal lost the finals in Australia and complained of breathing difficulties.
Yeah.
But my doctor said it's not related to that thing. Okay, let's move on. I want to keep it to the finance topic.
Can I ask you a question about gold for a second here? I was putting up a chart here about this 23-year record, I guess, in bullion demand here at the U.S. Mint. Let's play through this arbitrage idea that you're describing here, and that Bill Holder was talking about on USAWatchdog.com. What do people who are watching the show here, if they want a piece of this arbitrage or this deal, how do they play this on the market right now? And can they? Is there a bigger opportunity with silver?
They really can't.
They can't.
They can't, but they can help it along.
Okay.
They cannot participate in the arbitrage unless they can sell to the Russians.
Gotcha.
And that's not easy to do. I mean, Europeans might have a better opportunity at that if they've got some connections and they're part of a corporation that has a subsidiary with some Russian officers to their company. Okay, but this is something where I think the Western participants can help it along rather than participate by buying gold coins. Then buy and put your order in. And what we'll probably find soon is that the COMEX will admit that they've got a backlog of orders. They won't say we're defaulting on orders. We got a backlog of orders, and we expect to be able to meet them in 3 or 4 weeks, but they will be lying because it'll be 3 or 4 months. Okay, just buy, also, this is a key point. Buy Sprott, PHYS Gold. Let them do the acquisition of the metal. Remember, it was back in August and September of 2020, the Reddit GameStop.
Yeah.
And Sprott got involved and said, we're going to commit $2.3 billion to buy silver. What they were saying is, we're going to put a hot poker up Wall Street's ass. And they took some crap for that and got some threats for that. And let's leave that topic alone because it's kind of a delicate topic. But let Sprott do the heavy lifting. Invest as a small investor with Sprott PHYS for gold and PSLV for silver. Let Sprott do the purchasing and pressure the London and COMEX and expose them. I think if Russia plays this well, and remember, they play chess and our guys play checkers. They're a lot smarter when it comes to strategic issues. The Russians are already planning their next chess moves 3 ahead. That's what chess players do. I never got more than 2 plays ahead. I was good, not great. I was good and not very good. But I like chess, and I marveled at the computer programming that Mike Carnegie Mellon was a participant in chess, chess mastery. Yeah, MIT, Caltech, Carnegie Mellon. Anyway, the Russians are probably planning their next moves. And if they're not imagining a German Bund in euro terms held in Russia, then they need to start thinking about that. Because I think that the Russians could say to the Germans, you must offer a positive bond yield so we can do this. And then I think it could work. Okay, look at it as 2 things. This is another delicate point. The Russians could tell the Germans, you must give us 2% over and above the treasury bond. And that's going to put constant pressure on dumping the treasury bond. Or have a convertible option for future value of the ruble, which is going to go up and probably a lot more than 2%.
A lot of people are asking in the chat, can we buy rubles? How do we play that game also? Very
Hard
difficult
to do. You got to be a European. You got to have connections. That's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
I mean, how do you buy Turkish lira? Not an easy thing to do. You got to be a European. You got to have connections. But Goldman Sachs knows how to do it.
For sure.
Maybe call up Goldman Sachs and say, I want to buy the rubles. How do I do it? You guys are very active there, shorting it. Maybe you can help me out, Goldman Sachs. And they'll probably hang up on you and deny that they do it. Okay. Anyway, that's another delicate point.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about corruption. Jean-Claude, I'm trying to be careful.
Well, I wanted to get into this executive order. We don't need to get into too much of the corruption itself, but here Biden just signed an executive order that bars all transaction with Russian central bank's gold reserved. The new restrictions implemented by both the U.S. as well as its G7 partners are designed to prevent Russia from selling its gold reserves on the international market. How do you think that ties in? Is this a counter move to the gold-backed ruble?
Russia's pissed off.
Yeah.
They're pissed off. They had in the last couple of years, and I'm not really sure why. It might have been the Rothschilds, agents at the Russian central bank, but they moved a little portion of the Russian gold reserves into Western banks for safekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure of that motive. Do you know? I can't. Why would they want to divert? Maybe they thought something really oddball, like the Russian ruble was under attack. We don't want to run on the gold reserves in Russia bought by Russian citizens.
Right.
So let's move it to Netherlands. Let's move it to Germany. Let's move it to Italy. Not a lot, but some. Well, that has been stolen. I mean, it's not in the news. The central banks in the West have stolen, and I don't want to talk about it much. Or they said that they're going to put a freeze on it. Well, yeah, what happened to the Venezuelan gold freeze? What happened to the Libyan gold freeze? And Holter mentioned that Muammar Gaddafi was the last guy who tried to pull a stunt like this.
Didn't turn out too well for him, no?
No, but he didn't have a military.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a very powerful security agency.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have a lot of, let's just say, agents at work in the field.
Right.
Gaddafi did something very bold, but a lot more courageous than intelligent.
Yeah.
He didn't even have a lot of support in his own country.
And maybe ahead of his time in the sense that the U.S. wasn't as weak as it is today. The timing of it all.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Russia now has this opportunity for the German Russo Bund.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, it might come up. If it doesn't come up, they're missing something, because it could be optioned with future ruble value for the Russians. Okay, you know, future ruble value versus something. It's always versus something. So the ruble could be going up versus the Western currencies. And you know, there could, like, it could be a contract, say, to sell the dollar or to sell the euro, but something for the benefit of the Russians in lieu of that 2% that I propose. Maybe it'll be 4%. I don't know. I'm not the architect. I'm only coming up with concepts, but we're going to see something, and I think it's going to be developed, and it's just a future chess move. Now, our checker players are really dumb. They're walking right into a buzzsaw. They're poking the bear, and they're not wearing any armor. They're about to get clawed. They're going to get clawed.
Let me play this clip about how central bankers think right now and how absolutely confused they are. This is Pelosi, our ex-Bank of Canada governor. This is Evan Solomon on the news here today. And they're talking about the prospects of the next conservative leadership here, Pierre Poilievre, who's opining that Canada should be a cryptocurrency capital of the world. And that's just very quite odd for our politicians to be talking in this manner. But the mainstream news here and the establishment in the central banking world is making weird fun of that. And it's odd to listen here to the arguments they're making. Of course, the conservatives are saying this is maybe buying Bitcoin as an inflation or a hedge against inflation. Watch what this central banker responds to Evan Solomon here. And let's break that down a little bit for the audience.
Who is who?
Okay, this is Evan Solomon, the reporter. And then the other guy is Pelosi. Okay. Yeah, so let me bring that up for you guys here. And I'll take your commentary on that.
Yeah. Central banks, your former central banker, are a key feature in Pierre Poilievre's campaign, and he had a big rally, 1,000 people in Ottawa recently, and he said, look, Canada should become the crypto capital of the world because Canadians need to be in charge of their own money supply. And he used the phrase, through Bitcoin, you could opt out of inflation. How do you interpret what he means by opt out of inflation by using Bitcoin and controlling our own money? What's your response to that?
Well, first, I think Canadians do control their own money through their own central bank and a very transparent process by which it's administered. Setting that aside, being on a Bitcoin standard would be very similar to being on a gold standard, except more volatile. And the gold standard does limit inflation. So if the price of oil doubled or something like that, all the other prices in the economy would need to go down in order to offset it. That's the sort of deflation that you get during a depression. And so it's why we had the big depressions were during the gold standard years. The Victorian Depression and the depression during the 1930s. Those would not have happened if we'd had a more conscious monetary policy and expanded the money supply to meet the increased supply that came from the industrial revolutions. So I think there is a way around all this, which is to say we have an inflation control agreement. That's how Canadians control their money supply.
Wow. The Great Depression, Jean-Claude, had about 5 different factors. And the gold standard was probably the least important of all the factors.
Mm-hmm.
The most important factor was the European banks pulled credit, removed credit from the U.S. economy, and that undermined the 10-to-1 leverage in the stock market. It was a credit event. It was not a gold standard event. What a moron.
Well, he's absconding central bank responsibility for all this because they moved the money supply, as they said. And as soon as they retracted the money supply, this is when we had the problem. And of course, he's saying that Canadians are in control of their money. Bullshit, one. And
Really?
Two, he says we're controlling inflation through the policy of inflation of the central bank here. And that's how Canadians control their money and hedge their bets. I'm like, it isn't working too well right now, Mr. Pelosi.
Jean-Claude, they're controlling inflation by expanding the money supply.
Yeah.
In other words, they're producing inflation by expanding the money supply. Okay,
That's their only product, Jim.
Most central bankers, when they come to speak, if they don't speak obfuscation like Greenspan, they speak total nonsense.
Like this guy here, and you can tell he's not comfortable in this question.
No, he's not comfortable. Okay, what I interpreted all that to mean is the people in Canada are concerned about their currency, and they're concerned about their purchase power for their income and their savings,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably going to vanish. So there has to be a hedge. Bitcoin is proposed as a hedge, but a better hedge is silver and gold.
Yeah. And listen to there's 20 seconds left here. Listen to what he says about central bank issued digital currency and how those work, but not Bitcoin. That Bitcoin bad. Listen to this.
Okay, so for the people fascinated with Bitcoin, investing in Bitcoin, can you, through anything, quote, opt out of inflation?
Well, no, because Bitcoin is not a legitimate transactor vehicle. It's highly variable, so the price of things that you would buy would be varying all the time. It's, of course, digital currencies in a broader concept, they're definitely coming, but they'll be probably official ones, that the same kind of money that we use every day that's in our pocket. But opting out of inflation, I just don't understand that concept.
Of course you don't. The whole point is to trap everybody in your inflation scheme. Opting out of it would defeat the purpose of the central bank.
Well, look at the price of everything. I mean, even down here, the price of milk is 20% higher now than 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's my benchmark, milk. I mean, I buy a lot of yogurt and I buy a lot of orange juice, but I can easily monitor the price of milk. It's a 2-liter carton, and it's gone from $9.80 local unit to $10.50, $10.80, $11.00, $11.50, depending on your store. The bigger the store, the lower the price. The more a convenience store, the higher the price. Anyway, Jean-Claude, Bitcoin is not a great hedge against inflation. And he did make a good point. It varies in value. It fluctuates a lot. Bitcoin is not a stable value crypto entity. It's not real stable.
It's not stable, but it's to my advantage. Just
Yeah,
look at this. In 2012, with $20 Canadian, you could get 5 Bitcoins in 2012. This is Pelot's here in 2016. It took $1,000 to buy a single Bitcoin. That's the devaluation of your dollar.
I understand. But my point is stability, not the growth in value over time. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I made a forecast that Bitcoin was going to fall 70%. And that year it fell 75%. Okay. In the recent months, it dropped from 60 to 40. It dropped 33%, just round figures. This is not something that can be used in a stable manner. Of course, it's a great concept. Of course, it's the future foundation. I don't want their central bank digital coin. I don't want the CBDC. That's going to be Basel without transparency and without decentralization. It's going to violate all the principles of digital finance. Okay. Bitcoin is like a standard bearer that's got big ups and downs because it's so new. I had a friend who bought a bunch of Bitcoin at $90 and he sold it at 300 and thought, I tripled my money. Okay, that's the big flat part. It was 2011 that he did that. So something is pushing up Bitcoin a lot. And I believe
it's the inflation of the money supply. And this is what I would say to Pelot's. It's inversely proportionate to the money printing since the crash of 2008. So is there a hedge against the inflation of the money supply? Of course, you're seeing it in the Bitcoin chart. That's what I would say to Pelot.
It's not inverse. It's direct. The money supply goes up. The money supply goes up, and so does Bitcoin. Okay, right. There is that element. There is that element, but there's also the underworld that's using Bitcoin, and it could be trafficking. They're getting their bank accounts sacked, Jean-Claude, and one way to avoid that is to move into Bitcoin. The fact that Bitcoin went down could be that it got sacked and redeemed. Okay, sold. The Russians sacked a lot of Bitcoin. They didn't tell us how much. I think it was in the low billions in Ukraine. And they sold it, I think, to pay for their police action. This is really good. There's so much going on. The Asians like Bitcoin because North Americans can pay them under the table in Bitcoin and avoid the Security and Exchange Commission and the ferryman who's always looking for their fee. There are a lot of unusual and unconventional players who are using Bitcoin. And the fact that it went up a lot 4 years ago is evidence to me of a fractured dollar. And this is going to sound difficult. It's going to be difficult. Okay. The fracture of the dollar back 4 or 5 years ago, but also cabal elite bankster money seeking a safer haven so that their accounts would not get sacked, seized by the White Alliance. And I don't wish to talk about that much, but there is a tremendous amount of elite accounts that are being seized. They're being chased down. A lot of them are dirty accounts. Some of them are in the Caribbean. Some of them are in the Pacific Rim. Some are in, Five Eyes nations like Australia, New Zealand. And they're getting trapped and they're getting caught and they're getting seized with criminal charges. And I don't want to get into all that.
Jim, I got to push back just a little bit on this whole idea that Bitcoin is being used for illicit activities. Of course, every currency is. I agree. And I agree. But I mean, Bitcoin is infinitesimally small compared to the US dollar illicit activities that are going on around the world. But what I'm saying here is even the Treasury now is confirming that we can remove illicit activity from the Bitcoin fear, uncertainty, and
I think that's bullshit. It doesn't matter how infinitesimal it is. Suppose you've got a drug cartel in Mexico and you're sitting on $2.1 billion in cash. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
It might get seized. So you try to move a little bit at a time into Bitcoin.
And you launder it through the banking system.
Guatemala went official.
Right.
El Salvador went official.
Yeah.
We might see other countries go official. What are they doing?
But this whole idea that the narrative says that it's for illicit activities to dissuade people to get into.
Some.
Sure. Okay.
Don't ignore that some is existing.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm
not saying it dominant. I'm saying some.
Okay.
They're avoiding their capture and seizure of big accounts. It is a small factor. It is a factor. Yeah. The bigger factor is the trillion-dollar movements in restitution from the west to the east for past slavery and other violations. They're using Bitcoin. And that's a much bigger factor.
Well, and Rob was saying in my last interview that looking at the Bitcoin volume, he was opining that Bitcoin currency was being used to offset international trade also. It wasn't just the mom and pops now accumulating Bitcoin that was moving the dial on the charts. We're already seeing, Pelosi here is saying that it's not a stable transactor. Well, we're having sovereign countries using it as a stable transactor for international trade. So again, Pelosi is being extremely disingenuous, to say the least, in his comments.
He's ignorant.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think he's ignorant. He knows, but he can't tell you or the public the truth. He's
a liar. Yeah. I tell you, they either use obfuscation or total nonsense lies. Okay, Rob Kirby, I remember this. It was several months ago. He made the point that trade payment, bilateral quarterly payments were using Bitcoin to some extent. And I agree, but I don't think a large portion. Maybe they're using Bitcoin as a bridge to get off the dollar for payment, but the dollar is still over 60% for trade payment. Right. I mean, they say it's come way down when it's down 1.2% over a 4-year period. That's not a lot. Right. I think some of the Pacific Rim nations are using Bitcoin for local, regional trade payment satisfaction.
Jim, before we go, let's get into XRP, a fan favorite. Again, Cliff, in this last video, he's talking about in these old data sets that we would be entering this period of time where a lot of the altcoins would die. He specifically pointed out XRP in this video and said that basically the only client of XRP is the central banking model as maybe an alternative to SWIFT. And if the central bank model dies, which is a prediction here on the board with everything that's happening now, perhaps so too does XRP. How do you see XRP maybe coming out of troubled water in the next couple of months with the SEC lawsuit? Or is there a play to be made here where the governments are going to legislate around the CBDCs, which could pump up XRP until such time as those are rejected by the population? Jim Sinclair was saying that there would be 3 resets offered to the population, all of them rejected, until we eventually got into this sound money, organic economy for humans. What are your thoughts on XRP? How does that trade moving forward?
I think it's a very thin and weak argument to say that if XRP is largely owned by the bankers, therefore it's corrupt. How do you have a bridge created from the old to the new without a connection to the old?
That's a good point.
Therefore, you've got to have some handshakes. You've got to have some bridge on-ramps from the old system onto the bridge. Now, where we go is a little bit unclear, undefined, and murky. I believe the central bankers are going to be up against the wall with some very difficult decisions. They're going to face the prospect of having a central bank digital currency, a CBDC that violates the transparency requirement and violates the decentralized requirement. That's what they want. They want to violate those 2 requirements to continue their merry way with illicit systems, fraudulent systems. XRP must bridge from the old. When you hear that the bankers are the large block of owners of XRP. Maybe it's because of the news blackout that last October 1st, the SEC dropped its case against Ripple, and it's not been in the news. We've got 6 months, where the XRP Ripple lawsuit had been dropped, and it's not in the news, so that the bankers can continue to buy. I look as the single biggest element in my refuting argument that the bankers, the news, big tech are all blocking the news item of the dropped lawsuit. That is proof positive that XRP is legitimate for a future investment. They do not want the little people to own it.
I wouldn't doubt that for a second, given the ability and the reach of the censorship machine, that could be possible.
The central bankers and the big banks maintain a delusion that they're going to control the other side because they have for hundreds and hundreds of years. I don't want to get into thousands. I can't think in thousands. I can think, back to the, the Dark Ages and, Napoleon and the advent of the Rothschilds. Rothschild, by the way, is German for Red Shield. Red Shield was put on the storefronts back when money was being lent for the first time in history. So the Red Shield meant you could borrow money here. It later became Rothschild in their name. They adopted the name. They didn't want the name Bauer anymore because Bauer is German for peasant.
Don't want that.
Pretty funny. Okay, XRP is going to lead the day. XRP does not have a well-defined destination. I'm still learning about XRP. I'm still learning about the deals that are being struck. I think the big bankers signed on to something where they lied to themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have the power that they thought. They're not going to have the ability to defraud. They're going to want to do this, in an opaque fashion without a blockchain so they can, double sell the bonds like they always do.
That's the thing.
It's not going to work.
That's the thing with decentralized cryptocurrencies. It's like the Gutenberg press. Once it's out, and humans have innovation and ways to work together. And now they're seeing, especially here last month in Canada with the overreach and the power grab of the Emergencies Act, where the government was seizing your bank accounts if you don't agree with their politics. So that's waking up quite a few people. And the more we get into these egregious overreaches by government, people can use decentralized cryptocurrencies to get out from underneath that tyranny. That's what we're about to see, I think. But let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm just curious here because this is a trial balloon they're putting out. How does that fit maybe in your timeline of events? We've talked about the German Petrobund or Russian Petrobund here coming up and the difficulty that the US and the allies might face with the arbitrage on gold. Is this perhaps why they're starting to trial balloon the fact here that this lawsuit might be settled this month, even though
it is settled?
This is what I'm saying, but this is a trial balloon to get this into the public mindset because they're about to flip the switch here on a new financial
they dropped
system.
the lawsuit and then they opened it up again in a mythical manner. And they put a news blackout on the story. The law firms involved all admitted this has been settled. There's no more case. But the big bankers wanted it quiet so that they're the only buyers and they make it easy for themselves. They make it hard for us. I have numerous clients who say, I'm not able to buy XRP. What do I do? I don't have a great answer for them. There are a couple of different exchanges. I heard Uphold has some. You can trade Ethereum in some of the exchanges for XRP. It's not easy to do. But the bankers, I'm sure, have the carpet rolled out for them because they've suppressed the news that the case is over. They're maintaining the ruse, just like they maintain a ruse that a common cold is a goddamn epidemic.
Watch your words there, Jim.
Pardon me. I'm sorry. Did I slip? Okay, we're going to get defined the other side of the bridge gradually. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be enlightening and fun. And it's going to involve, I think, more than one blockchain.
Yeah.
It's going to involve some deals. It's going to involve concession by the big banks. I think we're going to have rolled out some central bank digital currencies that fail. They're going to be unpopular. They're going to get criticized to death. Yeah. And remember, about 5 years ago, JP Morgan issued a cryptocurrency. It went down 80% in value in 4 months, and they shut it down. Yep. Because it was not decentralized, because it was not transparent. Nobody wants them. Yep. It's like saying, I got some toilet paper now. I got some brown stuff on it, and you know, a little yellow stuff on the trim, and we're going to use that to buy milk. Well, they're not going to buy it. They're not going to use it. They're not going to accept it. Okay.
It's like the FDR. It was a stillborn baby. And this whole idea of the CBDC, to me, they know it's a stillborn baby. And that's why they were forcing us through these documentation, through this event that's happening around the world, to force us to use it. And even that, the narrative is breaking apart. So they need something else to push us towards their new system. What will that be?
Jean-Claude, we might start to see XRP used in an ad hoc bilateral fashion. These two countries announce they're going to settle. Like, I'll just make it up. Korea and Thailand, Japan and Korea, Japan and Malaysia. They announced they're going to use XRP. And screw you idiots who are delaying everything, because everything is falling apart. That's what I expect to see. It's going to get messy. It's going to get unconventional. It's going to be unclear. And it's going to be sorted out over time. And there are a lot of other things that you could buy that are easier, perhaps, than XRP. I mean, Reggie Middleton's DFI. Okay, that's another one. It's right now it's a little bit hard to buy. I've had some clients say I don't know where to buy it. I've tried. Okay, I don't have an answer for them. So the legitimate alternatives are being stymied. They're being blocked. Whatever's blocked, that's your winner. Like a censored story, it's your winner.
Like gold and silver.
The barbaric relic that does not earn a yield. And Warren Buffett was proved a liar.
Yep. It returns more than your bond at minus 18.
He got called on his options. He got called on his options for silver, and he lied and said, I sold too early. No, you sold an option call.
Guys, if you want to get some physical silver in your hands, this week, the promotion from the Miles Franklin affiliate program is these 100-ounce silver bars. They're at $375 over a spot. We just ran out of those Trump coins. Everybody was looking for those. They went out like this. And I believe they still have the 2022 Silver Britannias also in stock. The RCM products, Royal Canadian Mints, and the U.S. Mint products are harder and harder to source. They're looking at 6 to 8 weeks replenishing. Most of the dealers here in Canada are out, and they're saying maybe in 8 weeks they're going to resupply the Royal Canadian Mint products. In the meantime, here on the Canadian side of the border, if you're looking for silver as well, you can use the mfbullion.ca affiliate program, and there for the Beyond Mystic audience, we have the 10-ounce silver bars at $5.95 over spot. Still have inventory, but it's being harder and harder to find. I'm going to have Bill Holter tomorrow on the line at 3 p.m. No, that's at 4 p.m. tomorrow. He will be joined with Andy Scheckman. We are going to be talking about the tightness in the silver market right now. And I am going to ask Bill also about this arbitrage here in gold, and perhaps see if he has any other ways that maybe we, the little people here, the plebeians, can play that trade here too, as things progress here in the breakup of our financial story. Yeah,
I read a curious story. Pardon me. Sometimes I can't control myself.
I love it. That's what we love about you, Jim.
There's some Wall Street banks that are coming out now. Some of their officers, some of their strategists are saying it would be a good move to invest in gold and silver at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it tells me that the big banks are buying gold and silver, and they want the public to get behind them. We got something big coming now. I think we're going to see Russia pushed the gold price to 2,500, then 3,000, and blamed for the chaos that results. The The Wall Street banks don't want the blame. They know it's going to happen. Now they got an agent for change. This is maybe a stroke of genius by the criminal set, but let's watch this happen. XRP, I got a big debate with like 3 or 4 smart people. Some say XRP is going to go up to like $8 and stop. Another one says it's likely to go to 20 or 30 and then stop. Another one said it's going to go to 100, then stop. Another one said it's going to go to 1,000 and then continue. Mm-hmm. These are smart people, Jean-Claude. Yeah. These are very well-studied people. And I'm listening to each one of them. And I don't know who's right, because I don't think this is all sorted out. I think we've got a lot of missing elements from the big bankers who have not yet not yet raised their white flag.
Mm-hmm. We're getting close. Again, just wanted to show this to the audience. If you're just tuning in now too, Alistair McLeod was saying also something weird happening, and gold is behaving oddly. It could be because it's sniffing out what Bill Holter and Jim are talking about here in the arbitrage world. Jim, we have 2 minutes left, or 5 minutes left here to wrap up. Is there anything else we wanted to share with the audience members? Of course, we started this by saying rest in peace to our dear friend, Rob Kirby. Is there anything else in the hat trick letter that people need to be aware of? First of all, also, and how can people support you here at golden-jackass.com?
Well, before I get to my support, I'd like to say that Gold Money, where Alistair McLeod comes from, he had an interview with me in 2015, and he had another one. We did the entire 45-minute show. He wrote me back and said, my managers have told me we cannot post your interview. Yeah, it's too volatile. So Gold Money, you can eat a yard of my excrement. Okay, as for support, I loved you, Rob Kirby. You're my friend. I will always think about you. I will have fond memories forever about how you helped me with understanding some complex bank concepts. Whew. I've done my weeping. I'm not a guy who does long weeping. I have bursts and then it's over. Yeah. Rob was a good guy. So is his brother. His brother's probably pretty broken up about this. Okay, but support for me, it's golden-jackass.com website. In the current monthly report, not current, but in the most recent, the March report, I had a very long chapter about Ukraine, a lot of different sides to review, including some Russian maps. The Russian maps do not match the Western maps because the Western maps do not change. The Russian maps change every day because they're more honest. I had a good deal about the press and the propaganda. The Edmonton Fire Department putting out a fire in Ukraine. Yeah.
Imagine that. Movie magic, Jim.
And I had a photo of a Syrian group of refugees with their, let's just say, darker complexion. Mm-hmm. Which was presented as Ukrainians, which is nonsense. Okay, we're having production set. Anyway, I had a lot about Ukraine in a certain long chapter, but I had another long chapter about the dollar impact. Yeah. The de-dollarization effect. The cutting off of Russian gold supply to London. Mm-hmm. The reaction that will force Germans' hands. I think the Germans are going to part ways with Biden, whatever that administration is. I don't quite know. They're going to part ways with the U.S. supposed official policy. They're going to force that. The Russians are going to force that. And I got my reasons why, and I stated on this show, and I stated in the report a lot of details. Let me just say I've gotten more very positive, let's call it rave reviews for my March report than I've gotten for any report in the last couple of years. And in February, the same thing happened. So my therapy has been my work because I'm suffering. And I invite people to sign up for a consult, sign up for the newsletter, of course. I've gotten a parade of new clients in the last 3 or 4 months, and you've been part of that. Something funny happened last September. People signed up for the newsletter, but they signed up for a Mickey Mouse PayPal intermediate platform that did not migrate over to my new payment system. So I'm asking all of them now to move over, and they're not cooperating very much. I've had a few, but I'm waiting. They're probably waiting for me to cut off their password, their login. I haven't done that because I'm a nice guy. You got some time here, I say, and they're not doing it quickly. So I'll cut them off, and they'll probably do it in bigger numbers. But I've had a few sponsors. That's for bigger aid. I've had a few. I've got 3 clients who are doing it repeatedly. And I thought, wow, again, this is great. You're a repeat defender.
Yeah.
But sign up for the newsletter, not just to help me out, but to learn more about what's going on in one of the most critical times in the last 50 years. The last critical time was the Arab oil embargo and the advent of the petro surplus recycle.
Right.
And now we have a new architect. It's not Kissinger. It's not a big banker architecture project. It's the Russians. And I don't believe the Russians are evil. I think they entered Ukraine because the massacre of 14,000 Russian-speaking Ukrainian citizens living near the Russian border.
Yeah.
This was to protect from ethnic cleansing, and it's not very well covered in the news.
That's a complete conspiracy theory, Jim. Makes no sense. The mainstream news is not saying a word you're saying there. So,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly. So, folks, hey, if you want to learn how to navigate the crazy times we're in now, please do become a subscriber here on the golden-jackass.com newsletter and support Jim also. And if you want a little bit more hands-on approach, maybe try that consulting button. Have a nice conversation with Jim about your finances and perhaps how the world is going. Yeah, always a fun time to have Jim on the phone. As you know, just watching these interviews,
I did a
we have a great time.
today, and I did a consult yesterday. I did a consult on Sunday. I tell you, there are a lot of worried people. I had 3 consult orders in a single day. I've never had that before. I always get good comments afterwards, like, this is really good. I have to do it again. I have to do it again. And they do it again. The consult calls are fun, Jean-Claude.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every one of them said, Jim, this is really interesting and really enjoyable. I've benefited from a lot of your interesting background stories related to some of my concerns. And gosh, you just go on and on. You must be a lot of fun at a party. I said, yeah, as long as my family's not there.
Yeah. And Jim, you and I should record sometimes the after show comments or the pre-show comments you and I go through, because we have a hoot and we're always smiling. And that's why, guys, we're always late and we're trying our best to be polite and appropriate here for the YouTube audience.
You got my permission to record before we get on the air, and you could do a pay-per-view out of it. And,
yeah, that'll be fun. It'll be fun.
It's not where I get profane. I'm not very foul-mouthed at all.
Yeah.
I've got friends of mine who say, Jim, why don't you swear? I said, well, only when I'm really angry.
Yeah.
I had one little outburst today. One.
I look forward to the day where you and I can do some movie reviews. We always have a good time. You and I were a good movie stars. Yeah.
Now we had the Oscars event, which was what was that? A Black Lives Matter Oscar event? I'm not sure. But I still did not see 20 of my favorite actors in the past.
Mm-hmm. They're all AWOL, Jim. They're all AWOL.
They're missing in action. They're either living in Paraguay or they're residing 6 feet under.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, on that note, check out Mr. Jim Willie here at golden-jackass.com. And please do go and join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock Eastern with Mr. Bill Holter and Andy Scheckman. And somebody was just asking in the chat to get an update on the Beyond Mystic bar. Let me see if I can find that. We're almost ready to take orders for this. The proof die has been made. The mold has been made or is in the process of being made now. And we should be able to print the first bars, Andy told me, I believe, on April 12th. So we're very close close now to switching over this form, reaching out everybody who put their name on the pre-order form. You guys, of course, will have priority access to this limited run. So we're a couple of days away from announcing that, and I might have more news on that tomorrow on the episode with Bill Holter and Andy Scheckman. Guys, this was a tribute to our dear friend, Mr. Rob Kirby. Sir, please do rest in peace. I'm Jean-Claude of Beyond Mystic, and that was the amazing Dr. Jim Willie. Have a great day, folks, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au reservoir.